Well, topic 2. Let's talk about your favorite game, Dark Souls. What put Allie on the map?
Exactly. Yeah, it really is. And lots of people still, to this day associate me with Dark Souls. And my best ever YouTube videos explaining the story of Dark Souls 1 and 2, which almost has 200,000 views at this point on YouTube, which is kind of insane.
I'm thinking that to like my I think one of my videos has like 50 views, something like that. It's like when I clipped out when I went on to Irrational Passions and did like the first part of the song from Alexander Hamilton. I did that like really quick, and just kind of like rushed through it and did like the first basically half of the song in like a minute.
Cool. I
clipped that out, and then like that has a ton of views on it, and that's like my most popular video ever. So yay.
Yeah. No, like most of my views do not get nearly that amount. But yeah, that's I don't know what it is.
SEO on lockdown for Dark Souls there.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I'm just Dark Souls changed my life. It's the reason that I started watching YouTubers, because I wanted to learn how to play it better, and then the reason I started doing YouTube myself. I know now some popular Twitch streamers. Like I've met them, I've hung out with them in real life. Again, it was really one of the reasons why I started Twitter. One of my first tweets was about Dark Souls and poetry, and Jared Petty liked that tweet. And that was the first time where I was like, whoa, this is weird. Like, Jared's like, he's like just... there was always a distance, right? The great thing about Twitter is that it really breaks the distance between you and people that you really admire. So you can tweet something like, and then Jared Petty will see it and like it or comment. I think he actually tweeted me back. He's like, this is great. I like this. And I was like, whoa, like this is weird. This is like, you can have a conversation with people who you would otherwise have absolutely no access to. So I think Twitter is awesome, especially if you're interested in gaming. It's just where a lot of us hang out. So if you are interested in gaming culture and you don't have a Twitter at this point, I would highly, highly recommend it, because that's how you start making a lot of connections. And it's great. But yeah, Dark Souls changed my life because it just got me to think of gaming as more than just something that I do on my own, but as a larger cultural art form, essentially, and something that I wanted to contribute to. Yeah, I like it for a lot of reasons. I think the tweet that has the most likes ever, I've said that Dark Souls is better than The Last of Us, and I will take this opinion to my grave, which I absolutely will. I think Last of Us is just a forgettable game, honestly. I have no emotional attachment to that game. I think it's completely ordinary and average. This is maybe because I'm a heartless monster. I don't know.
Nobody has said Last of Us on as their favorite game for Trove Talk yet. So
okay,
you like Dark Souls beat Last of Us here.
Get what it is with that game. I just think that Dark Souls is just pure genius in terms of gameplay. I think it defines a new genre. I think it integrates multiplayer in a way that I've never seen a game do, and just so seamlessly. Like, you'll be playing, the thing, if you don't know Dark Souls and the way the multiplayer system works is there are different covenants, and so you can summon players into your game to help you defeat bosses. So you'll just be going through your level, and then you can just summon other players in just seamlessly. It just seamlessly integrates into your level, and then they'll just come in. Or you can have people invading you, and then you can fight other players. Seamless integration. I've kind of always, even before I started playing Dark Souls, I always kind of wanted something like that when I was playing Skyrim. I was like, it would be so cool if I could just, like, not play with people all the time, but if I just wanted my friend to just pop into my game for a little bit, and then we could go on a quest together, and then they could leave. Like, that would be awesome. And that's exactly what Dark Souls does. I think it's just incredible. And it's great for people who, like, don't like playing, like, online games in the way that you have to have a party chat and you have to talk to them. Like, you have no idea who these people coming into your game are. You don't need any friends on the PlayStation Network. You don't need anything. You just seamlessly integrates into your game. And I think it's just wonderful because it's just like a cooperative effort with a bunch of just like random strangers helping you defeat the level. Or, you know, there'll be assholes who will come and invade you, and that's fun. But there are ways to get around that. You know, you can just like not play online, and so you don't have to be invaded by people, or just not play in generally, like there's a special form that you need to be in to be invaded, and so you can just not play in human form or in ember form or whatever. Yeah, it's just a mastery, and the story is so incredibly rich. A lot of people, I think, just see Dark Souls as this hard game because that's how it's been marketed to the West. And I think that if I would say one criticism about video game journalism and commentary is that everyone buys hook, line, and sinker into marketing spiel a lot. It's just like, the thing is, people don't understand is like, okay, Dark Souls as being the hardest game ever and incredibly challenging, like, that's not what that's not what the artistic directors of these games, that's not, like, in his mind, that's not what the game's about. That is what some marketing department marketed Dark Souls, you know, to the Western Hemisphere as this challenging game, because, like, you know, it's fun, it's more of our style, but, like, there's a lot of depth to those games in terms of what they're trying to do with a narrative structure and what they're trying to do with gameplay. And very few people, like, ever really explore this in the West. And it's just, I find it just kind of shameful because you're not actually investigating what the piece of art is trying to do. You're just like, oh, on the back of the box it says, you know, prepare to die, and Dark Souls is so hard. Dark Souls' intention is not to be difficult. It's designed that way because the creator likes those kind of games and they think that it adds to the story, but really it's trying to do very interesting things with video game narrative, and it completely eschews the emulation of movies and trying to be Hollywood. And that's one of the biggest things that I don't like about Naughty Dog, and why it doesn't relate to me in any way is just because I see them as movies, and they're completely just borrowing from that art form. Like Neil Druckmann, I just think that he wants to, you know, I mean, there are movies that works all the time with him, and that's not what I want from my video games. And like, that's just a proponent, like that's just something that I have, and I'm not saying that I don't want those games to exist. I'm just a proponent for a particular gaming style. Like, I'm a pundit. I'm a Dark Souls pundit. And so, yeah, that's what I really, it does something completely different in terms of the way it's trying to tell a story. It's just completely tells a story through gameplay. And it is completely, like, you don't need, it doesn't borrow too much from other art forms, like movies, which I think a lot of Naughty Dog games do. Like, that could just, Last of Us could just be a movie.
Yeah.
I mean, and it was a play. Like, it doesn't need to be a video game at all, really. I mean, some people make an argument for, when you take over Ellie, you know, a spoiler alert, I guess. When you take over playing as Ellie, that is a good gameplay element, but Dark Souls completely blows, I think, The Last of Us out of the water in terms of narrative storytelling in, like, just a medium that is truly, like, a video game.
Yeah, I mean, I'll definitely, having not played Dark Souls, I'm not going to weigh in on the Dark Souls versus Last of Us, but I totally understand, like, your side of that argument. And especially, yeah, like, I think because it's still such a new art form, yes. I think you do still have video games that are over-reliant on, well, we know narrative mediums of plays and of movies because they've been around so that much longer. So it's easy to kind of use that as a guidepost, as opposed to figuring out something that could only be a video game experience.
Absolutely. Like the same thing with, you know, the transition from theater to film. Like the first movies were very much just like staged like a theater production, and then people started developing like techniques that were unique to film and things that could only be done through film. It didn't need to be done like a stage. And so, yeah, absolutely. So
going back to the beginning, what got you to pick up Dark Souls in the first place? What about that game jumped out at you? Like, had you read about it? Had you heard about it?
I think the level design. I picked up Dark Souls 1 right around the time that Dark Souls 2 was coming out. IGN ran like a feature, like we replaying Dark Souls 1 in preparation for Dark Souls 2. So we saw that being played. I think it was Megan Sullivan actually playing it, and someone else kind of guiding her through the level. And first of all, I really like the aesthetic. So I really like games that are kind of take place in a medieval setting. I just hate really games that take place in like a modern like shooter kind of setting. I don't like that at all, really. So the aesthetic, just like and then I guess I just recognized the brilliance of it. The first level of Dark Souls, essentially, and Dark Souls does this all the time, is that you progress through a level, and then it's all about circles. So Dark Souls is never essentially linear. You are always making a circle through the level. So you'll start off at a place, you'll progress, slog through the level, then open a shortcut, and you'll realize that the entire level is interconnected. And then once you open that shortcut, you can go from where you started, skip past everything that you've done, and it makes it much easier to, after you die, to just run through to kind of the end of the level. But it's really brilliant in the way that they're all, that it's all connected. And that just struck me again as like, this is something special that's going on here with the level design. And so I picked it up, and yeah, I loved it. Like, I never really ever found it that difficult. I don't know, I guess it just makes sense to me because it's much more, it's kind of like playing chess. I think that memory is very important to Dark Souls, remembering where enemies are placed. So when you're running through the level, even if you die once, I will automatically know, okay, this enemy is coming through here. I need to backstab him here, then his friend is over there, so I'll know where he is and then get him there. And then, so it's very like slow, it's methodical, it's patient, which just suits my style of gameplay because I'm much more of a thinker than someone who has like fast FPS skills or something like that. And I loved the different weapons, like the weapon customization. Like, I've never really seen anything like it, in that there are a bunch of different kinds of swords. So you can have like a straight sword, or like an S-talk, like a long pointy sword, or a two-handed broadsword or something like that. And they all feel very different. So it's kind of like open in terms of what weapons you use. Like, you can really be anything and do anything. So the level of customization is fantastic. You can wear different sets of armor. And it just like everything just kind of clicked. And then the kind of the mysteriousness of the story, and how everything is ambiguous, and all the NPCs are unreliable narrators, and you never really know what's going on, and there's just like this huge like dangerous dark world to explore and to figure out. And yeah, it's just awesome. It's great.
So you touched on kind of how everybody says like there's no story to Dark Souls, and
yeah.
how, like and the fact that people are out there looking for like the lore and the story of Dark Souls, and finding videos like yours
Absolutely,
suggests that maybe players who even are enjoying the game or looking to get into the game aren't finding it just from kind of exploring the world and kind of the gameplay storytelling that's there. They are looking for like I know your breakdowns, you'll go through and you'll look at like the items, and you'll break down the description of the items, and that's where a lot of the story and the history of that game exists. And so it resonates with me as somebody who occasionally will kind of like, I'll play something like Dragon Age, and then I will go through and read like all of the codex entries and stuff to kind of get the fleshed out backstory. But I in that, I also know that I'm in the super minority of people who are doing that, compared to the people who take the story that is just fed to them. So, I mean, it definitely seems certainly in line with your character to be the kind of digging and doing that extra bit of investigation to figure out what's going on there beneath the surface of the game. But I mean, so do you see that as an obstacle that the players should just like expect to overcome with Dark Souls, or like should Dark Souls and games like Dark Souls try and be a bit more transparent probably isn't the right word, but like try and give a little bit more of that story in a more overt manner? Or is it like, I guess curious on your kind of take of that criticism that I've occasionally seen on it.
Right. Yeah, I don't think that it needs to be more overt. I just, again, it goes back to, I would just really like artists to create genuine what they feel. And Miyazaki, the creator of Dark Souls, English is his second language, obviously. He's a Japanese creator. And he used to read stories, and he didn't really understand English, but he used to read English fairy tales and English myths and stuff of this nature, and he didn't really understand everything. So he would just get the information in pieces, and that's how his mind kind of worked. It's just understanding the story through the pieces and then kind of putting it together himself. So I think the fact that Dark Souls does convey you the story just kind of in pieces and in fragments, I think that's very much what the artistic director wanted. And I think it does give it a very unique feel, open-endedness. Revealing too much of something, I think especially in art, often makes it too cliche, too overt. Like the story of Dragon Age Inquisition is far less sophisticated in my mind than the story of Dark Souls. And part of it is just because I think it's hard to tell a narrative when you're just saying everything, because the majority of if you have like so much text and so much exposition, then eventually some of the stuff is going to be kind of cliche and weird. And Dark Souls I think just tells a more sophisticated story. And I think part of it is just because so much is left up to interpretation. If you start going into like, oh, I'm explaining exactly everything, then it may be a little just not as interesting, not as exciting. And I don't know, I'm kind of a snob in this way, but I don't think it's kind of like beyond criticism to me. Like, it just Miyazaki has shown a level of mastery that it's like, I don't know, like you just can't really criticize what he's done. I mean, you can maybe point to different artworks that you find are more compelling or more convincing, but I don't think that you could, he'll listen to that and he'll be like, okay, the next Dark Souls, for consumer demand, I'm gonna like make a more overt story. It's like, nah, he's just on a level beyond that. And I think that's fine. I think that's interesting. Again, the story is, and you don't even need to, I think that, you can run through the game and like not even be bothered by the fact that you don't know everything that's going on. I don't think it actually takes away very much your enjoyment, which is kind of very interesting, just because you can just run through this world and just be like, oh, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm just kind of having fun and playing the game. I've seen people just play the game and just be like totally blind to all the story. They're just like grinding through, they just find it fun to play, and like that's totally fine. So there's this other level. I think it's there for people who want to seek it, but it doesn't need to be overt. I think I'm more critical of journalists, and again, people who don't take the time to understand what is going on there, truly going on with the story. And a lot of people do a good job, like Chloe at IGN is like, I think she really understands the game really well, and she does a lot of the Dark Souls reviews and stuff, and she's awesome. So I'm not saying like everyone, but yeah, I'm more critical of people who don't take the time to understand what it's doing, rather than wanting Miyazaki to make a more transparent narrative in the future.
So my next question for you, Dark Souls wise,
yes,
is under the notion of, should there be an easy mode of Dark Souls?
Okay, yeah, no. No. Again, I think there is, because that wrecks your kind of experience with the game if you have to like go into the mode and you can adjust it to easy. It's just not as seamless and as well integrated. It's just, here's the world, here are the rules of this world, and then you can figure out how to go from there. I think there is an easy mode to Dark Souls, and that is summoning people and playing as a warrior and playing with a bunch of armor and playing with a bunch of health. Again, if you summon people, like summon 2 to 3 phantoms, it's still hard to kind of understand that that's what you're supposed to do in the first place, how to summon people into your world, and to have the resources to do that. You kind of have to build those up a little bit, but there kind of already exists an easy mode to Dark Souls, and that's just with in-game mechanics, which I think is awesome. And more games could explore that, instead of just having like a button that I press. Okay, now it's easier. Now some algorithm has gone through and, I don't know, adjusted your health, or adjusted the health of enemies, or adjusted whatever their shooting abilities or whatever. Just make it so, okay, if I pick up this suit, I'll have an easier time, or if I choose like this class, I'll have an easier time, or I can, just do more things that are like integrated within the world rather than just having like press a button, now it's easier.
That makes sense. I definitely feel like that it would. You shouldn't make the whole game easier to accommodate like the people that are whining about, like the people like me. And it's not that I'm whining. It's just that like if there were an easier barrier to entry and I knew I wasn't going to die over and over again, I would be much more inclined to experience the game. Whether that was, but right. I wouldn't want that to come at the expense of the people who are enjoying it in for its difficulty, and so I wouldn't want the game to be an easier game. But I guess I don't see necessarily if I wanted to be kind of the person who experiences the story and the beauty of that world, and not just through watching Let's Plays or something like that, wanted to experience it for myself. I don't have, like, inherently I just don't have a huge qualm with, like, use that algorithm that just gives you a lot more health or gives them a lot less health or something like that across the board. But I would fully understand that especially given the culture around Dark Souls and
it would piss a lot of people off in the community, like, it's like, how do you reconcile that with a multiplayer?
It makes
because the multiplayer is so you couldn't even really do it because the multiplayer is so seamlessly integrated with the game. Mm-hmm. So if you are summoning people in and then you're on easy mode and they're on hard mode, then what does that look like? And if you're doing a PvP match, like a competitive match with someone, and you have enemies that are on like, how does that even work? And then it would just piss a lot of people off. A lot of hardcore fans would just be like, what? And nowadays I think your community is an incredibly important part
of the
video
simple
game
work
marketing, and like streamers are the new like video game journalists in a way. Like, more people I'd reckon listen to what their favorite streamers or what their favorite Let's Players are saying about a game, rather than like when I want my opinion on Dark Souls 3, I'm gonna go to people like Dreaded Cone, or I'm gonna say a bunch of names you're gonna not understand any of them, but like Dreaded Cone, P. Peverson, or Oboro. Like, I'm gonna see what they're saying about the game and not necessarily what IGN is saying about the game. No offense, like what IGN is saying about the game, or GameStop is talking about the game. And so, not pissing those people off, I think, just people would be like, what the hell is this? And it wouldn't work mechanically, I think, for Dark Souls.
Well, I think the mechanic workaround is that you just make like with like, so only people playing the easy mode can jump into the easy mode. So that's where that argument falls apart a little bit, but the bigger picture and the bigger argument that I understand surrounding the culture and the community around the game is that like there is so much pride taken on like beating the bosses and figuring out the strategy behind that. So if you make it so you have an easy mode, so like somebody like me can jump in day one and like just burn through the whole game, and quote unquote spoil it for anybody else out there who's playing the more the true Dark Souls way in hard mode. I totally get that would
go over well. And another part of it is just like, this is like, we're all in this challenge together. Like, it's a very difficult game, but the Reddits exist, and like you can leave messages to people in other worlds to exist. You can summon people in. Like, we're all in this challenge together. And so having some people playing that on easy mode, it's like, well, you're not really experiencing the challenge in the same way. Like, you're just, like, you're cheating yourself of the experience. It would just be sad. It would just be, like, sad. It just doesn't. It would just be like, well,
I guess,
like, the thing is, like,
so
we can help you.
Curious.
We can help you in other ways. You can summon people into your world and, like, all those things, but, like, you don't have to hit a button and make it easier.
Sorry, we're still cutting out a little bit, so I didn't mean to talk over you or anything, but I get, like, I come into then, why is it that, like, other games that do have an easy mode or difficulty settings are just inherently then inferior to something like Dark Souls, or is it just those are different types of games, and so the difficulty is less relevant there to the experience?
I think less relevant, yes. I think it just, again, Dark Souls has been designed very well. It's a whole package, and you remove one of the parts, and like I think it kind of falls apart in a way, because the multiplayer and the difficulty and the way the narrative works, it's all been designed essentially because you have the strong creative mind. I'm going to say it again, but you have the strong creative presence of one person, essentially Miyazaki and his team, as an extension of him, but it is really that one person. It's been designed from the top down, so everything kind of plays a role and everything works together. And something like Dragon Age Inquisition, for example, right? Difficulty isn't really that what you're really playing that game for. What are you playing that game for? You're playing it for the story. Really, you are playing for the story. The gameplay is kind of not that great, and you're playing it for like the emotional connections that you develop with the characters, and it's just doing a very different thing. And then BioShock, I think, pretty sure has different difficulty settings or whatever, and it's like, again, you're playing it for the story. It's just like, it's not as relevant, I would say. It's just, you can experience the different way, and yeah, I think the multiplayer aspect, again, is very, very relevant to understanding of how Dark Souls works, and because in order to make it easier for you, you can just summon other people into your game to help you. Like, you can just summon your friends. Like, that's kind of like, in what other game can you really do that? Like Dragon Age Inquisition, you can't just be like, oh, I'm having difficulty with this boss, let me summon my friend who's much better at the game than I am and just like have him help me. Like, that doesn't exist, right? But that does exist in Dark Souls, so you can make it much easier for yourself if you want to.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So Dark Souls versus the sequels, is you chose Dark Souls for this. Is that leaning more towards nostalgia, or is the first Dark Souls like the best of the series because it was first, not counting Demon Souls in the
I
spectrum?
think it is. Yeah, I think it is the best in terms of like narrative structure and what it's trying to accomplish. Dark Souls 2 is kind of like a little bit of an outlier, because From Software kind of had two different teams, and then like Miyazaki and the A team went on to work on Bloodborne, so they didn't actually work on Dark Souls 2. So Dark Souls 2 has a different feel to it. Dark Souls 3 is the return of kind of Miyazaki and the A team, and it is very much more in line. It's almost kind of like a sequel to Dark Souls 1, and then Dark Souls 2 kind of does its own thing. So it's almost like kind of Dark Souls 1, then Dark Souls 3, and Dark Souls 2 is like kind of an interesting side project in a way. Mm-hmm. Although there are ideas that are taken in Dark Souls 3 that reference Dark Souls 2, but still. So I think it is, Dark Souls 1 even, it's not a perfect game. Kind of falls apart towards the end. Levels are much less cleanly designed towards the end. There's kind of two acts. The first act, I think, is a complete masterpiece, and then it falls apart a little bit in the second act. Some of the levels feel rushed and things, but just in terms of the narrative, it's hard to compare it to the other two, because what Dark Souls kind of adopted is this idea of cycles. So the next two games are kind of a rehash of things that have happened and been set up in the first game, because the basic premise of the world that Dark Souls 1 sets up is that there's always the same cycle. A flame is kindled, and then the curse of the undead happens, and then the fire starts to die, and a bunch of evil kind of creeps into the world, and then a hero emerges, and then he lights the fire. But is this a good thing, or should we just essentially destroy the world, and then just let everything die and embrace darkness? Or are we constantly fighting against darkness, but also fighting against darkness has consequences? So it's like a cycle, and like this has been going on for millennia and generations and generations. So Dark Souls 1 kind of introduces you to that, and then Dark Souls 2 and 3 are just like different kingdoms experiencing the same cycle. So they haven't really done anything new. They've just kind of added a little bit more depth, but Dark Souls 1 sets everything up, and it is the template essentially for 2 and 3, and 2 and 3 are kind of just like rehashes what happened in 1. So it sets everything up, and I think it's just in terms of levels and bosses, it's again everything that's just new and fresh, so it's hard to differentiate. I think Dark Souls 3 is very good as well, but I think it's the best game, just because of what it does narratively, and just the nature of the Dark Souls stories. 2 and 3 are just kind of rehashes, and it also just has the best level design, though it's not perfect, as I said.
Is it like, so you say that like the second half feels a little rushed?
Yes.
So I wonder if that was like a publisher demand led the game to be rushed.
Yeah, it probably was, because a lot of the areas in the second half feel a little bit more unfinished. and just not as tight, and like it just seems like some assets in some levels in the second area are kind of like not really like even finished. Like literally there's a level at like the end of Dark Souls 1 where it's just like you're in a pit of lava and there are a bunch of dinosaur like butts running around everywhere. Like it's half a dinosaur. Like it doesn't make any sense.
That couldn't just have been the character design, the
I mean,
model?
I'm sure it was generally, but like it's just a bad level. It's just like what the heck is this? Like it clearly wasn't done. Like I think it just clearly wasn't done. I'm not saying that they wanted full dinosaurs, that they only got half. I'm sure somehow, but like it's just a weird level. And so I'm sure
just
it's
like
just
the
like,
butts are just so much easier to model.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm sure it's just like one of those weird things, you know, we can't all be perfect with everything, but it just seemed like a little bit like they were running out of running out of like creative ideas or just like running out of time, probably a combination of the two. But the first act is like beautiful and kind of flawless, and then the second, some levels feel rushed.
So you've mentioned Miyazaki a lot, and I feel like either we've talked about this or I've heard you talk about it on like Irrational Passions or something like this, but you're kind of the mindset that Dark Souls without Miyazaki doesn't exist, correct?
Yes, yeah, it doesn't. And I think, I mean, it can. I mean, people can try to take elements, but there are just some things, some creators like that come along once in a generation, and you can just feel their mark on a game, and their form of artwork is just so unique and so brilliant that it could be something under the same name, but it would be something different. Like someone can take the ideas, but it would never be Dark Souls, just as I'm sure as a lot of pretty much any game. But I think this is a case where, again, you can kind of relate it to like someone that people may be more familiar with, just like Kojima. Would Metal Gear be the same without him? And I think it's just no, because it's just such a crazy thing. Like Metal Gear is so crazy, Dark Souls is so crazy. Like there's just two complete visionaries in our industry. And so I think it would be something very different. I think that like that IP will probably continue to exist. Miyazaki said that like Dark Souls 3 is his last one. I think that the IP may be taken over by someone else just because it is very profitable for Namco Bandai and whatever, so they can still continue to exist. But it just, going back to the artist and thinking about the artist and his vision, and I think that's just something that's very hard to replicate in anyone else. It's just his mind. It is entirely him. So yeah,
makes sense. And I agree with the overall sentiment, but I also wouldn't I guess that I'm probably like too. So I'm fascinated with, especially in our culture these days, with people who were fans of a thing getting to now create that thing, becoming the people who are now making the things that they were fans of. So like
Sure.
one of the best examples I often point to in this is like when Jason Segel did the Muppets movie and brought them back. He was a huge fan of the Muppets growing up, and like that was like a dream project for him to work on, and his passion and love for that tapped into what made it special in like the first place, and so it was like the first good Muppets movie we got in decades.
Interesting. Yeah.
And I think that people that intimately know a product like that can take it and build on it. I think it's possible. I think there are just as many examples out there, I'm sure, where you're going to see something that, like, especially in like reboot driven culture, where you get the wrong people attached to a project and it fails miserably. But I would say that I think there are instances out there that we can maybe point to and say, oh, like somebody who grew up and now has like Dark Souls in their blood, as a gamer, could take that and say, this is what makes Dark Souls great, so I want to make something in that same spirit. And they might not do it in the Dark Souls name, but they might somebody might make a better Dark Souls because they tap into that and bring a new idea to it as well. So that's
a very good point.
That's certainly something that fascinates me. And if they were given like the reign to do it on like in FromSoft or something, if
right.
I mean even the people within FromSoft, if Miyazaki is like second in command or something, took it on and is intimately familiar with it, but because he's not the name, he's not Miyazaki, he doesn't have the recognition behind him. He could still have just as much passion and drive to make it a great experience.
Mm-hmm. And in a way, I guess that's what Dark Souls...
I wouldn't want to like write him off.
That's what Dark Souls 2 was, right? It had a different creator. It's probably someone very close to Miyazaki, and it was good. But it's widely recognized as kind of the weakest in the series. But it's still an amazing game. But you're right. That's a very good point, and it does... I think you're right. It shouldn't be too cynical, because there are people who are growing up with Dark Souls, and there are people who are going to make the next Dark Souls, whether it's literally the next Dark Souls or kind of a different iteration. So there are going to be other geniuses who are, taking... Just needs to be just a special kind of person to make art at that level, I think. And I think at the end of the day, you kind of have to be open and honest about it, that it's not just about like putting your best foot forward and like, I'm going to make it. You really have to be gifted in a certain way in game design and in just in literature, and you're just understanding how to tell a story and all that kind of thing. It all has to come together in this one brilliant person, and I don't think that comes around every day, right? I think there's a very small percentage of people who can actually accomplish something like that, and I think you're right. One day the next Dark Souls will be made by someone who's equally as and again, not literally the next Dark Souls, could be a different name, but someone who will be inspired by Dark Souls will make the next big thing, but it may not come, in the 2020 release of Dark Souls 4 by Bandai Namco,
Yeah. And as we're talking, I'm also immediately thinking of like the complete opposite end of my argument, in that like Randy Pitchford worked on the original Duke Nukem and insisted on bringing that back, and it was a big old garbage fire. So like passion doesn't always do it, is
exactly
what I'm realizing.
Unfortunately it does.
Well, great. Any final thoughts? Any parting wisdom as to like give people the pitch on why, if they haven't played Dark Souls, like if they're an idiot like me, why they should suck it up and play Dark Souls? Don't fall into don't be too scared of the fact that it's sold as one of the most difficult games of all time or whatever, and then you might see Let's Plays of people banging their heads and just be like, oh, this is so tough. Forget those. I can give you my pitch, but I'm gonna just refer you to someone who has inspired me to play Dark Souls, and is I see him as just one of my mentors, even though we've never actually met. We've spoken briefly over Twitter, but I hope to actually speak to him one day. His name is Epic Name Bro, and he's kind of like an OG in the Dark Souls community. And watch a little bit of his Let's Play of Dark Souls 1, and he just has such an understanding of what the game is trying to do and conveys it in such a great way. I think that's a great introduction. I recommend that everyone who's interested in Dark Souls go check him out. Play the game along with him if you dive in and you find it difficult, and he will kind of explain the beauty of the game and just the understanding of it. It really is a truly rewarding experience, and I think there is something in it honestly for everyone, whether you just like really fun gameplay or whether you like really great storytelling. There is something there for you. Just don't expect it to be given to you easily. It's kind of like reading good poetry, right? It doesn't hit you over the head with its narrative, but it's there, and it's been designed by kind of a brilliant person in such a way that you just have to work through it and read it a little bit more. But use Epic Name Bro as your guide, or my own videos, but I don't have one for Dark Souls 1, so use him for that. And just give it another go, or just give it a go. It's beautiful, and you're depriving yourself, I think, of a really beautiful experience to not at least try. Cool. Well, thank you for giving me the rundown on Dark Souls and discussing some of my, as a non-Dark Souls player, some of my views on the game from the outside.
Yeah.
Cool.